Hello to everyone. My name is Dina Ocampo. I'm from the University of the Philippines College of Education. Thank you to Ayala Foundation for inviting me here. Congratulations on your sixth DG conference for Gurong Magiting. I am very pleased to be part of this endeavor, and it is an honor to be able to share in your mission of helping teachers cope with the challenges of their profession and to develop themselves into becoming better teaching professionals. Today, my topic is building a framework for learning and literacy recovery. And I think our first point to discuss is the issue of recovery. There are so many issues that have come up, such as learning loss, learning poverty, school deprivation, and I'm hoping to be able to dissect some of these things with you today. But first things first, whenever disaster strikes, there is a way for all of us to be able to get up and go once again. Even if we fall, our job is to get up and go. And our first response to a disaster or to a crisis is to be able to have post-impact emergency care. And I think that we've already done this at the onset of the pandemic when we went on lockdown, so that this was the first task to protect all of us. The second phase of recovery is reconstruction, which is a medium to long-term effort. Lots of programs and lots of activities need to be put together and orchestrated so that we can move forward and grow and arise from, recover from our disaster and misfortunes. The third phase is transitioning, and we are transitioning into a new normal, so to speak, or to business as usual, if we are able to do that, and to be able to prepare for the future. I think that these phases of recovery are important to keep in mind because sometimes we are impatient in getting to where we want to be, but we don't necessarily plan how we are going to get there. And I think the journey is a very important phase and a very important act in the effort to recover from a disaster. So first things first, we need to understand what hit us. What is it that has caused these difficulties? What are the challenges stemming from? Um, why are there problems with education that we are now facing? So let us come to grips with the statement that the pandemic worsened the learning gaps we already had before the pandemic. And I think this is an important admission that we must make. You see, the education of children and youth is a major concern in the Philippines. It always has been. Alarms for learning loss by many groups have been made before 2020 and especially now. Globally, because of the pandemic, learners have had 50% less contact time with teachers and peers. Previous studies on education disruption due to natural disasters posit that every month of contact time lost, the learner suffers 2 months of learning loss or learning delay. So the sooner we get to school, the better. That said, we need to be able to leverage whatever we learned during the pandemic so that we can use technologies to prepare ourselves for 21st century demands, but also to be ready for possible other disruptions in the future. So switching from remote to face, just like that, may not necessarily be the best thing to do. In fact, pre-existing inequalities were actually magnified by the pandemic, and this worsened, resulting in the poorest of the poor children becoming even more vulnerable to hunger, disease, abuse, and marginalization from social services such as education. Indeed, the poor are becoming poorer, and this is a very serious thing we have to grapple with. So what is learning poverty? The World Bank, UNESCO coined this term in 2021. They also released an update together with UNESCO, UNICEF, USAID, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. They all raised the alarm that learning poverty is taking over a lot of the world, and children everywhere are experiencing difficulties. So what do they do to compute for learning poverty? First, they compute for schooling deprivation, meaning they computed how many children are not in school. And then they computed for learning deprivation. And this concerned children who are in school, but these children are not learning enough in school. So with a formula that they organized together with the UNESCO Institute of Statistics, this formula now results in an index which they call learning poverty. For the Philippines, a lot of red flags were raised. They found that 69.5% of our learners are unable to read text for their grade level. And this is connected to how much we spend on education. We spend 30% less than other lower middle income countries on education. We spend about $600 per child in primary school per year, whereas other countries in the same economic class as we are in spend $2,000 or more. Compared to other East Asian countries, which are not necessarily lower income countries, we spend 84% less than they do. So they spend nearly $4,000 per child, whilst we spend $6,000 per child. Now, this in itself is a flag that we must be aware of, and we must continue to fight for more funds towards education that goes to schools and teachers. So what are we aiming for? Because we know what hit us, we know the status of our learning loss, we know the status of our funding. What are we aiming for our recovery? Well, the most important thing we must aim for is literacy. As per the K-12 curriculum, children should become literate at the end of grade 1 in their mother tongues, in Filipino and English, and therefore have literacy in these languages by the end of grade 3. Obviously, we expect it to be strongest in the mother tongue. Literacy is also a human right. It is a tool for personal development and empowerment. It is a means for human and social development, and it leads to economic opportunities and employment, which depend on literacy. So it's important for us to remember that we are all entitled to become literate. And this is important for us to remember because we are being measured on literacy. For example, in the discourse on learning loss, the definition of a child who is able to read is a student who independently and fluently reads simple, short narrative and expository texts. They locate explicitly stated information. They interpret and give some explanations about the key ideas in these texts. They provide simple, personal opinions or judgments about the information, events, and characters in a text. This is the basis of the learning loss definition. They're saying that about 69.5% of our 10-year-old children are unable to do this. So this is what we must be aware of. So what can we do? we must prioritize and make a plan. The World Bank, USAID, and other international organizations, in an effort to assist governments struggling with recovery from the pandemic, have identified 5 key steps. And they have the acronym RAPID. So R is to reach every child and keep them in school. And they have identified 4 action points for this. For example, reopen schools safely and keep them open. And then they identify others. They promote returning to the classroom through back to school campaigns. So you want to get children back to school because many of them aren't going back to school because of economic difficulties. Provide cash transfers to poor families, and to use early warning systems to identify children at risk. The letter A in RAPID is assess learning levels regularly. And so we must find out if children are learning. And this is most important at the classroom, but it has to be aggregated towards national levels as well. P is to prioritize teaching the fundamentals. We must go back to numeracy, literacy, and social-emotional learning skills. And this is what we need to do. Prioritize this first so that everyone has a chance to recover and learn content with these skills. I is to increase the efficiency of instruction, including thorough catch-up learning plans. And this way, if we want to do this, we need to support our teachers very well. And the letter D in RAPID is to develop psychosocial health and well-being in teachers and in students alike. This framework for learning recovery and acceleration has been proposed to a lot of countries in the world. What else can be done? We focus on literacy. So we make a plan, and in that plan, we must focus on literacy. And this is in line with our theme here in Ayala Foundation. We want to be able to put a premium and put a spotlight on how to make our children read and read well. So there are 5 actions for children's literacy that we must promote, because this ensures that they will have meaningful reading and writing abilities. First one is we must ensure that everyone is politically committed to making all children literate. And when they are politically committed, that means they must also have the technical expertise and commitment to do that. Number 2, we must ensure adequate amounts of effective instruction by supported teachers. In other words, they have to be learning as much as possible. Reduce programs, reduce contests, reduce other activities that take them away from literacy learning. Third, provide age-appropriate books and texts to children. The more books, the better. And these are not textbooks. These are storybooks, content books that they will learn from and read. But they have to be age-appropriate and also ability-appropriate. Fourth, teach children first in the language they speak and understand best. This is a dictum all over the world, that this is how we begin the teaching of literacy. We begin with the child's language. And then we move on to the other languages as they become proficient in their own language. And then we must foster a love for reading and books so that children will learn to seek out information on their own. So these 5 action steps are crucial. We must develop the instructional materials that children require. We must support teachers in developing these instructional materials for literacy. And because we are talking about child's language as the basis for literacy development, we must make books in these languages. And we must strengthen the core. We must use this literacy to support all aspects of learning, and schooling and cognitive development, such as science, speaking, listening, technology, creativity, critical thinking. But the core of this must be literacy. So we must focus on the core. So the foundational literacy skills for primary grades include all of this. And therefore, we must make time for all of this. And teachers must become upskilled in these areas. So we must know how to develop decoding, spelling, fluency, comprehension in all children for reading. And we must be able to develop writing, the mechanics, how to generate text or compose, how to plan and edit, and writing knowledge about who are we writing for, what voice are we using. And of course, all of this is facilitated by our ability to concentrate, to review, to pay attention. And together, the foundational skills of reading and writing will strengthen our literacy, our core competence of literacy. Hopefully, we'll bring our children through lifelong learning multiliteracies that help people adapt to change. For example, at some point, we all need to know our historical literacies, our cultural literacy, our health literacy, financial literacy, and economic literacy. All of these literacies are founded upon our ability to handle texts meaningfully, both in reading texts and creating texts. And all of these lifelong literacies are hinged on that. And that is how important literacy is to the lives of all children and people as they get older. The first thing we must do is to read stories to children, various stories, and therefore we must support libraries, bring libraries to families, bring libraries to schools, as many as possible, because the more books are in children's hands, the better they will become engaged with literacy. Let's not even talk about opening up imaginations and creativity. Let's just talk about them being able to decode, to comprehend, to know the vocabulary that is needed when they open those books. What else can be done? We must make decisions with the learner in mind. And I think this is sometimes forgotten very often, that a lot of our educational decisions don't have the learner in mind. And I think this is a flaw in our system which needs to be addressed squarely. For example, when we say learner centered, we say that we will differentiate our teaching. We need to know what our learners have and do not have. For example, some learners need little supervision, some need average supervision, some need a lot of supervision. So we need to find out, does this child have a learning partner at home? Yes or no? Does the child have access to a computer or a gadget? Can the child communicate with the teacher, let's say through Messenger or Viber or email? We need to know these details so we know how we can communicate with our students who might be on hybrid instruction or who are forced to be remote because of another typhoon, flood, or earthquake. So we need to check what sort of instruction will student A need. This student needs little supervision, has a gadget, has a learning partner, and can communicate. So maybe this student can really handle remote learning modules. But look at student B. Student B needs a lot of supervision, has no gadget, does have a learning partner at home, and can communicate. So what we need to do is to use print modules for the student and communicate with the learning partner and teach that learning partner how to supervise the child at home. What else can be done so that we recover from our literacy disasters and literacy crisis? We need to support and enable communities. There are many interventions on the ground that are helping learners. And we need to make those flourish rather than keep on dictating from above what to do. We need to support those endeavors. So we need to enable local solutions to counter the impact of the global virus or on learning and to provide communities with the means to implement good programs. We need to provide tools, technology, equipment, gadgets. We can have gadget drives. We can custom fit study carrels with gadgets for people to borrow and to use. But most importantly, local governments, national government will have to spend on education and spend on opportunities for all children, especially those who are economically disadvantaged. We need to prepare for blended learning. There are barangay learning hubs, provide connectivity hubs with free Wi-Fi for children to do their research, um, have parents and learning partners get training from Bayanihan efforts, have remote co-learning spaces, and open up safe spaces for library work and study areas. Finally, we need to help each other cope so that we will build hope for each other. And I think that when we do this, we become the best of the people we can ever be because we can give children examples of adults helping each other and of adults giving a chance for people to recover. Finally, we need to broaden and widen areas of transformation. We need to have policies that are working and that are good to be continued, nurtured, and well supported. We need to remember that we have to attain the sustainable development goals for all children and follow the basic education development plan so that most children can learn. And the key to all this is implementation science, to review results and look at multiple areas. Is education working and are literacy efforts working in all community types? Not just urban areas, but all types. Fishing areas, farming communities, remote learning areas. We need to find out where education is working and how we can support those programs everywhere. If we pull ourselves together and see the big picture of recovery, we can transition to a more world-class 21st century system of education that builds both face-to-face and technology-driven learning together and supports teachers in doing the same. And most importantly, we can leverage our literacies to become more aware of what is true, what is not true or fake, and we do not become victims to those who wish to create chaos and who want to confuse us about how we should develop as a country moving forward. These are my references. I hope that you have found some nuggets of wisdom and nuggets of approaches that can be done. And I would like to thank you all again for inviting me here. Bye.